I did. I gutted this space and it turned out beautifully. But right away, as soon as I rented it, we got a new property management company and they came in and went, wait a minute, what are you doing? And shut down my construction, even though I had everything approved on a lease. So it cost me a bunch of money.
Hello, and welcome to the Cash-Based Practice Podcast, a production of drjarodcarter.com, aimed at giving physical therapists and other healthcare practice owners the information needed for success in the private pay business model. And now, here's your host, Jarod Carter.
Hello, and welcome back. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Today's episode of the podcast is a real treat for me to present. I got to interview one of my longtime students in my mastermind group a little over 2 years after she started her practice. And she intelligently started in the mastermind, I think a good 2 or 3 months before she started, making sure to get everything in place and ready to launch, which a lot of people don't do. They wait until they get going and then they start to try and get the answers they need, and it's kind of backwards. So she did it the right way, and it really did pay off quickly, along with, of course, just who she is and the results she gets, the niche she was in. A lot of factors came into play, and she was about 75% booked out within just 3 months. And so the worst case scenario that so many people going into practice on their own did not happen. She didn't have to go back to work for someone else or any of those other fears that are so common. We talk about that. And she just has done an amazing job in these last 2 years. Now has another physical therapist and a couple people that help with admin in a beautiful space there in beautiful Utah. So Valerie Schwalbe of Wellbeing Physical Therapy is going to walk us through all the things that worked and hasn't worked. And I'll tell you, it wasn't just a slam dunk, easy ride. She really faced a lot of challenges and roadblocks that not all private practice owners, have to deal with. And so we talk about those and how she got through them. And so there's some really great tactics and strategies, as well as just inspiration in this episode. So thank you, as always, for joining us. Before we dive in, of course, I want to thank patientsites.com, the amazing sponsor of this podcast, and my friends. They help me in so many ways beyond just my website. I've been so blessed to work with them. And if you want to have your website and a lot of your marketing and lead generation and nurture all taken care of, check out patientsites.com. Mention this podcast. If you want to get started with them, you'll get a nice discount. Thank you so much, as always, for joining. With all that said, here is Valerie Schwalbe of Wellbeing Pelvic Physical Therapy.
Valerie, thank you so much for joining. I always enjoy having my mastermind students on the show when they're kicking butt and tell their stories. So thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So tell us a bit about yourself and what brought you to that point of starting your own practice.
I graduated the University of Utah in exercise, sports science, and then I did a route in adaptive physical education. And then I went to PT school. And so I had a pretty diverse background when I came in, but right in PT school, I found pelvic health, and I've stayed there ever since. So when I graduated, I was working for a company where I had done an internship, and I'd been working there as an aide through PT school. So I started a pelvic health program from scratch at that clinic. And then I worked there and ran that for about 2 years. And then I moved over to another outpatient orthopedic clinic. They had an existing program, but I worked to rebrand and grow and added a few therapists to that clinic before starting my own. It's been almost 2 years now.
Yeah. I was trying, before we met, I was like, wait a minute, it was 2 years ago, or was it just last year? But I knew we were kind of coming, I remembered that we were coming up on one of those annuals that when you got started, and you started in the mastermind before, right? You were like just gearing up to it, which I think is always smart, whether it's in my mastermind or just some other coaching and guidance program. It's like, don't like open your doors and then scramble to find guidance. It's like, get your ducks in a row and learn things ahead of time. So
no, just the opposite. I listened to the podcast for a very long time. I wrote my first business plan 10 years ago. PTC
Wow.
was a cash-based pelvic
Oh,
health
cool.
clinic. And then when I started the program, I had to write a business plan for my first employer to prove that the program would be viable.
Hmm.
And so I'd already written at least 2 business plans, like 10 years before I actually wrote my own. And then I started listening. I mean, it was pretty obvious, several years ago that a cash clinic and a private pay was the only way to go for what I wanted to do. So I've been listening to the podcast for a long time, and
Okay.
even before joining the mastermind, and then I was in that a long time, and then I jumped.
Right on. That's right. Yeah, you were in for a handful of, like a good number of months, right, before you made the leap. So, what was that like, making that decision to start, like, after 2 different employments, like finally making that jump to do it yourself? I mean, did you have, was it, what's that? Terrifying. Okay. I always like to hear, some people are like, oh, it's fine. But most people, it is really, it can be really scary. So how'd you deal with that and do it anyhow? What would you tell the listeners who are in that seat now?
Well, the actual logistics of it was easy. It just made sense. For the vision that I wanted, and I know you have a lot of pelvic health followers too, so they understand this quite well. But for what I wanted to do, there was just no way. I mean, it was only about 10 minutes of pen to paper before it was pretty clear that an insurance-based system just wasn't going to work for what I wanted to do. So that part
Which
of
is
it.
what, like, when you say, for what I wanted to do.
I've always had a dream and a vision of having a standalone pelvic health clinic.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with the hospital based or the ones that are in an outpatient ortho center, or an outpatient orthopedic clinic. But my vision, what I wanted, was to have a pelvic physical therapy clinic that's all we did in its standalone space, so that everyone that walks in feels comfortable. We're all here for the same thing. You're not kind of scooted into a back room to go to that other stuff, and then you come back out in the gym and you have to be kind of careful with your language and where you put your hands and how you cue people, because they might be embarrassed to be out in an open gym, with someone else working on some standard knee issue, going like, what are they doing?
Mhm.
So I just wanted a place that was stable, comfortable, and so validating that it's really its own space. And so I know a lot of people start out in gyms or in renting other spaces, which is really a good option. I really like that, but that just wasn't what I saw for my clinic. And and the reimbursement just doesn't cover that. If I wanted to spend an hour, I want to go over lifestyle, I want to go over nutrition, I want to go over posture, I want to go over history. Like, I just wanted to spend so much more time, like, really getting into people's issues, and insurance just wasn't. I mean, even good insurance wasn't really reimbursing what I needed to have my own space.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I was just curious about the details of that. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's good for the listeners to have heard that, because, a lot of people go into this business model for a variety of reasons. And a lot of it is driven by what you had just said, but a lot of it's also not backed up by what you did, which was actually look at, okay, well, what would I get reimbursed in these different plans, or likely, and can that work in what I want to do? And the numbers didn't add up, and you actually ran the numbers. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you did something that a lot of people don't. They just assume that it won't work, and actually, when you do run those numbers, there are, in some geographies with some plans, like, pretty solid reimbursement rates. You still have to pay someone to chase them down to get paid. But I'm just glad to hear that you actually put pen to paper and ran those numbers and confirmed before moving forward.
Yeah. And my
That was
first
the
business
case.
plan was insurance based. So I already had all that data of what I'd been getting reimbursed for almost 10 years prior in the same state. And like everyone else, we're watching it kind of tick lower and lower and lower. And then you get into the problem of, well, now you have to see more people. And I just like a really common theme on the podcast, I just didn't want to spend that time getting less. I wanted
Yeah.
to spend that with my patients.
Awesome. Awesome. So, tell us about the beginnings of that process. You worked in the mastermind with me and the group for a few months leading up to it. What were some of the things that you felt like were really beneficial as you've officially opened your doors to have in place ahead of time?
I liked all the detail that I had picked up along the way. Each little podcast gave me one more thing I need to write down. And even now, being a member, my mastermind member, I still have a little notebook every week as we go over the meetings of like, oh, I gotta do this social media thing, or I have to do this thing. And so it really helped me develop a plan of everything that I needed. I knew I needed rent and insurance, but it was also important. I got a lot of good information on how to get your website started and
Mhm.
not a business card.
Yeah.
And also just how to market and what are you going to do and what does this look like, and things that are personal. How do you spend your time? How do you navigate this with your family? How do you use your free time? Who
Mhm.
do you hire? When? I listened for so long that I felt I'm the kind of person that I'm so risk averse, but I'm not necessarily conservative. So I knew this was big and I knew it was a jump, but I had so many safety nets in place just in case, so that when
Yeah.
I made my jump, I just didn't want to fail. I mean,
Mhm.
nobody does, but I wanted to be sure.
Yeah. What kind of safety nets can people set up?
So actually, I had some really good friends, really amazing, supportive friends and family.
Mhm.
And the more I talk about, I think I want to do this, the more people were very encouraging, to the point I had two friends actually tell me, you know what, tell you what, I'll hire you. So either as a side gig until you get off the ground, or if you crash and burn, you can come work here till you pay off your loans and then you can try again.
Wow.
So I
That's cool.
felt that I was really, really supported. And I have a lot of people who are pretty blunt with me. And I really appreciate that have come right out and said, "Well, you've done this twice.
Mhm.
You've been successful. You've hired other therapists. You've grown a business. You're just now doing it on your own. You can do this. You've already done it. Just
Mhm.
do it."
Yeah.
So it was nice to hear when you're kind of, I don't know, what if, and you can just get lost forever in that insecurity and planning. And there comes a point where you just got to do it.
Mhm. Cool. So when you made that decision to do it, if I remember, I'm thinking back, you'd started working with us in the mastermind. You were still seeing patients up till not long before, right? That you started your practice, correct?
Yeah, I switched pretty quickly from one practice to another. So
Okay.
I didn't want patients to lose where I was. I
Mhm.
also, I didn't want to poach anybody from my previous clinic, but I also didn't want them getting lost from it.
Mhm.
It wasn't about the business part of it for me, and employers talking about whose patient belongs to whom.
Right.
It was really about, these are real people, and I didn't want them to get lost.
Mhm.
So, if I'm not going to go soliciting patients, I need to be ready for when, I walk out the door, that they have somewhere else to go as quickly
Mhm.
as possible.
Okay, cool. So you got started, and I feel like I remember, being really excited about how quickly it took off. Like with so how was it just like a few months, and you were having some really fully booked days and weeks?
Oh yeah, it was fast. It was
Yeah,
really fast. Actually, that was one of my challenges, was I thought that I would have more time. I put
yeah.
all these things into place, but a lot of them you don't really know how you're really going to use this intake form. And I'll go
Hmm.
back and edit it later. Or I'll put a website up and I'll go back and edit it.
Hmm.
So I actually never had time to go back and do those things. That's honestly, that's a lot of what I'm doing now.
Hmm.
It took me, I think I had maybe 7 patients or something like that my first week, and
Hmm.
then I was about 75% full within 3 months.
That's right. I remember.
It was
That's
fast.
awesome.
It was a lot faster than I thought, and I did do conservative measures to make sure that I could grow. I
Mhm.
think I had, 75% within 6 months or something. Was I set some short-term goals along the way,
Okay.
and just to make sure that I wasn't high pressure to get those kind of numbers, because that's what we're trying to avoid, right? Is pressure to get numbers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I set some conservative goals, but they went really quickly for me,
That's
which
awesome. And when those patients were following you, and maybe any others that you worked with before, and then they sought you out, the last place you worked at, what you were providing was insurance based, correct?
yes.
So when they made that transition with you and followed you over, what were those initial conversations like? I mean, were they, yeah, for others in that scenario of like, you used to see me on an insurance based level and now it's, out of pocket, straight from you. How did you go about having those conversations? What did you find that worked there?
Well, I mean, maybe I'm just a complainer, but all along, if someone tells me that, oh, I mean, they complain about their insurance during their treatments while you're seeing them as an insurance based clinic, and all you can say is, I know, I hate it too. And so it's not like it's a surprise that insurance sucks for a lot of people. So for me to be able to say, I'm just out of this part of it. I think no. First of all, nobody was surprised. I never liked it. I was always mama bear and a huge advocate for try to get people to get their services paid for.
Mhm.
But I explain that this just allows me to spend more time with you and allows me to do the things that are just you and me, and that's kind of my style anyway. And I was already a little bit of a boat rocker for just kind of doing what I think the patient
Mhm.
wants all along, which is probably what led me to finally have to jump ship and get, stop missing reimbursements because I'm going to do it anyway, even if we don't get paid for it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, People don't tolerate that for long, and so it was a lot of conversations, but I felt like I really pride myself on trying to have relationships with my patients where they would understand where I was coming from, and that I really hope that they all know I have their best interest at heart.
Yeah. And with, on that same topic, what about, since you started your practice and you get a prospective patient call, but they haven't worked with you before and maybe they don't know the difference. How do you tend to guide those conversations, or what have you found have been kind of the winning strategies for those scenarios where they haven't already experienced the difference and worked with you before?
I listen to a lot of recordings called how to answer how do you take my insurance question.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I
We've
listen to
got
those,
plenty of those.
and I actually put it on my website. So I have a page that gets a little soapboxy about it, and so
Mhm.
it's there. I'm not hiding it, but I also don't get on my soapbox for everybody that gets on the phone either.
Mhm.
I keep it simple and pretty straightforward. And the biggest issue I had initially, and the biggest hurdle personally I had to overcome in some of my stuff too, is don't be apologetic about it. If
Mhm.
you over explain it, you sound like, well, but it's going to be okay. And no, it really is better. And you're kind of talking them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're truly confident about it, it takes practice to sound confident about it.
Mhm.
So I still have the conversation about insurance, and we say the price. It is what it is. I don't tend to avoid it. If someone says, "Do you take my insurance?" Well, we've chosen to be private pay or out of network, but here's what we do offer, and not exactly a take it or leave it in a rude way, just simply this is what we do.
Mhm. Okay. And do you, well, you mentioned price. Are you okay with talking about your pricing?
Absolutely. And I know that a lot of people kind of go back and forth on that one of when you talk about your price and how much. I kind of feel like the whole point going to a cash pay instead of an insurance-based clinic is so that there aren't any surprises about what this is going to cost you. So I actually prefer to say, this is what it is. These are our rates, and they're the same for an evaluation as they are for a follow-up. So we basically go by time. And I know that there's the issue about, well, that makes you a commodity, but I don't, for me, it hasn't been an issue. I spend, here's the time for the hour, and we get to use it doing whatever is going to help you. And if one day it's this and the next day it's that's great, but there's no surprises. It is what it is. And so that I am trying to intentionally separate the money from the care.
Yeah. Not focusing so much on the money, but more about the level of care. With that last question, what I actually meant, which I'm glad you misunderstood it and answered the way you did, was, would you be okay with talking about your prices to the audience? Like,
yeah.
what do you charge?
Asking what I'm charging. Go off on a tangent. Easy.
That was a great point. I'm glad that you, yeah. Okay.
True story. I started out too low, right? Do you remember that?
Who doesn't? Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
You gently nudged me for like year and a half.
I don't think it took that long. It didn't take that long.
It was close to that. But I mean, so I started at 150, and I was going to start even lower than that. And one of my friends who does this in another state is like, girl, So I started at 150. I knew all along it was too low, but again, I just didn't have, honestly, it was confidence. Yeah. And so the day I switched, it was, maybe it's been about 6 months now. And I moved it up to 180, and now 150 is my telehealth price. So no one said a word. Yeah.
So speaking of telehealth, in the pelvic PT world, I've wondered about that a lot because, as you know, that's interestingly become the I guess most numerous or most represented niche in our group, in our mastermind. Aside from maybe like just general outpatient ortho practitioners, pelvic health has the most of our mastermind besides that. And so I know it's working because you're all, pretty much all doing telehealth, to some degree. So, but compared to say an outpatient ortho, do you feel like there's much difference? Or for anyone out there who feels like they're in a niche where telehealth just isn't going to work, say like the hardcore manual therapist or whatever, like how would you respond to that? How have you made it work for your niche?
Well, first of all, to be fair, I probably am a hardcore manual therapist.
Yeah. So you both. Pelvic health and hardcore manual therapist. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're still doing it. You're still doing
manual, visceral, manual's my jam, in a way to teach people how to do it on their own at home, and then exercises and all this stuff ortho does. But for me, I know there are therapists that can do 100% telehealth. I know that some that swear they'll never do any. I had to do telehealth as just to keep it as an option for people when I closed for COVID for 2.5 months. And so that catchphrase of the pivot, I had to pivot, right? So I was planning on doing it anyway for some of my remote populations. And so I just I was following and prepping. And then when it was, you're shutting down today, I went, okay, we're doing telehealth today then. And I could just turn on a dime and go that direction because I'd already planned it. But now I use it. And even then, I never felt like it was going to be the answer for everybody. But I did start some people on some things. So for some of my exercise-based people, wherever they are in their program, if they were more focused on the exercise component or the movement component, that worked for them. So I had enough people during that time to keep their programs going. And then the other people just either waited or, I don't know, went somewhere else. They haven't told me if they did. But, and I still plan, now that I'm back open again, I still plan to use it as more of a hybrid model. So if I have, a mom that lives 45 minutes away and has 3 kids, and, then maybe we do, manual therapy, and then we'll do telehealth for 2 visits. Or we do some in person and some distance, just because I get people from all over. And of course we're limited on states for telehealth, but Utah's a big state, and so there's still people who drive several hours,
Okay.
and that's not always appropriate. But I'm probably right in the middle on people who are all in or all out. I do both.
Okay. And the way you phrase it, I couldn't tell. Did you close your doors for 2.5 months? Your decision, or did the state say PT has to close?
It was my choice.
Okay.
So we're an essential worker, we're essential service here. And I totally agree that a lot of physical therapists absolutely still are. I didn't feel like I was. And so I just personally, and I know this is really pretty individual, I didn't feel like I could really do my part keeping my patients safe. I closed down for a little bit. And then when I reopened, I was able to take that time and get my clinic ready and purchase new supplies and just come back safer and have it be more appropriate than to continue.
Yeah, we followed the exact same thing in my clinic, almost to the time frame and to the T. Just figuring out how we can make sure it's all good and all safe and or as safe as possible, and then kind of reopen. And now we have the mix of telehealth and in clinic. I'm only telehealth, but my staff is in the clinic, and it's going good. Now with you, I remember you saying, I do want to get into staff stuff because I know you just hired. In the middle of all this, folks, she brought on her first therapist, which is fantastic. Are you still operating on a reduced and spread out schedule? I'm guessing. Yeah. How much of like a percentage drop are you having to take spots off your schedule in order to spread things out sufficiently?
When I opened in June 1st, and I did not yet have my other therapist or my admin. And so I put 1 hour in between each person because it was taking me so long to overkill, because I kind of overkill everything. So
cleaning stuff, airing it out, that kind of stuff.
Airing out notes, laundry. And so I was by myself. And so then in July, when I hired both a new admin, front desk, clinic support staff, and a therapist. We did that for just like a week maybe, and then we both put half an hour in between. Mm-hmm. And so almost for the month of July, we've had a half an hour in between, and then we stagger. And then my administrator quit. So
that's right. Yeah.
We were right about to go back to back, mm-hmm. but I'd be starting on the hour. She would start on the half an hour. Okay. And then I have 3 rooms and we have a big enough space. So we were just going to basically be spinning plates. We can't do that without somebody helping us clean the rooms. And so until I get a new office staff person, we're going to stay at a half an hour in between to keep up on those cleaning questions.
Okay. Do you mind if we talk about staff or why this person left, or like what you've learned from, because she was not your first admin, right? So like, what are the things that you've learned, and for better or for worse, with your experiences with staff so far?
My first 2 office staff were fantastic. I love them. One was my mother and one was one of my very dear friends. Mm-hmm. So they talk about support. Nobody's going to love you like your mom, but also I'm an adult. My mom is helping me every day in clinic. So now she's my
mom.
But it was, and it's really weird to not yell like "Ma" across the
yeah.
I just have to be professional. But it was wonderful knowing I had that support. And then when my dear friend was here, she just purely wanted the best for me, and kind of needed a little, like, I was interested in a little job for a few hours. Like, I'll totally help you. So that was so wonderful. But we knew right out of the gate that was going to be a short-term thing. And then, my mother's over 65. Like, she's going to kill me for telling everybody that. But she went on isolation for COVID. Mm-hmm. And then my friend had to go home with her son when they were out of school. So it wasn't anything that was regarding the clinic or they weren't happy. It wasn't that either one of us were unhappy. Everything just shut down and they had to go. And and then I knew my friend was going to go in the summer anyway when her son was home. So that was planned, but I was planning on replacing her, and then I shut down.
Yeah.
So then when I opened, I used your hiring techniques to hire someone else, which was incredibly helpful. But you still get some that slip through the cracks. And on day two, I've decided that after this phrase, I'm just gonna show. So grab your purse. If anyone starts a conversation with, so I wasn't gonna tell you this at the interview because I was afraid you weren't gonna hire me.
Oh God.
You can just stop. Just stop.
Yeah. Stop there and leave.
Thank you. Thank you for not wasting either more of our time. I appreciate you. A for effort. We're done here. But that's pretty much what happened to me. Apparently, this person thought she could do the job, and then I guess she had some health conditions. And so then I'm stuck between wanting to feel like a decent person and helping her and trying to make her comfortable. And then there's a job to do. So she wasn't able to get up and clean the rooms in between. It was too much for her. So it wasn't long. It was just a couple weeks, and it was mutual that she said, I just don't think I can do this anymore. And I said, well, thank you for your honesty. And here we are on the hunt again.
Yeah, right on. Was she able to at least kind of help to build out some of the onboarding and procedures and documentation of things?
No. But so she was only there. I mean, she was such a short time. And by the time she was trained and going, and then of course, she's got to jump right in and picking up on all the stuff I hadn't been able to do. I was pushing a whole bunch of things aside while it was just me. So she was helping a lot in getting caught up. But I also hired my physical therapist as the other admin. And so she's been doing admin hours as she's building her PT schedule. And so she's been able to do some of those systems and some of the build outs. And so the next hire will be
documenting things. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I had already done that with, when my friend had done some of it, I did some. So my previous two admin had already done a big part of it. And then my PT worked on updating it.
Okay. Very good. You know how I get about documenting systems.
I know you love your systems.
Till I'm blue in the face.
I'm with you. They're incredibly helpful. And the Loom has changed our practice. And I know all your little tips on all these ways to make that more efficient have been incredible. And it's really been great. And then also my PT gets to learn the job a little bit better.
Yeah, on the logistical side of things too. So that's a good topic as well, is and we get this a lot in the cash pay world where there's not huge budgets and you're not pushing to, grow to necessarily, 10 practitioners in the first year kind of thing, is this idea of, should I pay a physical therapist, on just a per patient basis, or you've got an admin rate and a PT rate, or, or it's just a salary, or, there's all these different approaches and ways to slice it and dice it. And so just curious if you're open to kind of sharing, obviously not to share numbers, but like percentage wise, like how did you work that out with her where she's going to be making a certain amount for certain things and a certain amount for other things?
So I've listened to all of that, and in the future I may change as I get busier. But when we were first beginning, I have her on a per patient wage. And personally, I just felt like, we're a specialist. She'd already done coursework. I really wanted her to be treated like she was a legitimate physical therapist right out of the gate, and not have to do the, work at a mill job to earn your right to have a decent job kind of thing. So I wanted to pay her a pretty decent wage right away. And then also it kind of covers for note time, and she's a new graduate, so if her notes take a little bit longer, I didn't want her to feel like she wasn't making any money, but then it also encourages her to be efficient. So I gave her a per patient wage, and then when she clocks in for admin things, so I use Square and Square payroll, so she just clocks right in when she's doing admin stuff, clocks right out when she's going to see a patient, and then I just track the number of patients she sees per week. And then as those scales start to shift, and her schedule gets busier, then ideally we would have one part-time admin right now. And then when those scales start to shift, I'll replace her with a second when she's more exclusively treating patients.
So you're thinking of going 2 part-time admins as opposed to bringing on 1 full-time. And what's the decision making behind that?
Because we're such a small clinic, like if someone calls in sick, we're kind of hosed. So they can cover for each other. Plus, when I have my hours and my other PT has hers, I had to arrange my hours around my kids' school schedule. My husband travels for work, and sometimes it's pretty sudden, like you're leaving Monday. And so I need to be able to drop my kids off and pick them up, which is part of one of the reasons why I wanted to do my own clinic. So I don't have late hours, but of course, a lot of people like those. And so her hours go later than mine. And so I don't want somebody working 10 hours just because the clinic's open that long. So because we're open longer than 40 hours a week, I have 2 admins that can split those hours up so nobody's working too terribly long. Yeah. And then also just to cover for each other.
Perfect. No, that's great. It's nice to spread risk. Now over time I've realized I'd much rather have 3 part-time PTs, than 1 full-time or 1.5, it really does help. You never know what's going to happen, what life is going to throw at them or you or whatever. So
yeah, when she left, she told me the night before, I'm not going to be there tomorrow.
Your last admin? Oh,
yeah,
wow, there wasn't even a...
Yeah, when she resigned, I didn't even have 10 hours. So I was really thankful that my PT was working as admin so we could just keep right on going. Yeah. If she had been my only full-time person, I would be totally empty.
Yeah, well done. That's great. Contingencies. We've been working a lot on that kind of stuff in the mastermind.
It's my jam.
Yeah. We're going to kind of get into, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but some more on kind of streamlining logistics and cash flow management soon, as well as, how to double down on marketing methods that can work in a recession and a pandemic. And so we're going to be diving deeply into new forms of email marketing, as well as not necessarily brand new things in social media, but just being better on social media, which right after this, I'll be doing another intern interview. We're almost there. We're going to have a great intern to help us execute all these strategies that I just don't have the time or staff to do right now. But there's a lot of talent out there, a lot of students that are like taking gap semesters or they just need interns. There's always that going on. Did you I feel like, were you one of the group members that used an intern as well recently, or am I totally thinking of someone else?
No, I have had interns, just PT interns, but I haven't had anybody do my social media because honestly, I haven't. It's one of my areas of weakness, and I'm going to probably listen closely to your
Yeah. Well, we're going to be we're doing some master classes on it coming up. Yeah. So as you've kind of gone through these last 2 years, and thankfully it's gone really well. Even in the middle of the pandemic, you were able to kind of pivot and keep things going. And now in the midst of it, you've brought in your first PT. So first and foremost, like hats off, you've done a great job. What are some of the things that you could, some of like the specific strategies, whether it's marketing or anything else that you would attribute, okay, I did this and it definitely produced patients or definitely produced leads. Like, what would you tell others listening and wondering, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to get enough patients in the door quickly enough? Since you did it so quickly, what did you find were the keys there?
I guess it kind of depends on where you're starting. So if I were be moving to a brand new city and didn't know anybody, I don't think it would have been the same experience for me. Yeah. I've lived here all my life. I started my degree in 90 something. I've just been in this world for so long, and I've developed relationships with physicians, and I just kind of set myself as, oh yeah, she's that pelvic health girl. Like, so I've established that for myself over the years, and I think that was critical for me. I honestly, I haven't officially done marketing. Like I haven't brought anybody lunch in years, and I won't.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was, I haven't, I only go into doctor's offices if they like want to do a meeting or something. So I'm not opposed to it. I don't need to, and I don't have the time. I have patience. So I've been booked for weeks or months for a few years. And so when I went to make the jump, I figured even if I lose, half of my patients, which is unfortunate. Of course, we all want to treat as many, help as many people as we can. But I thought I'll still be busy. So and maybe even provide better care because now they don't have to wait weeks for their appointments. So I was so busy, I felt confident that if and I did the math, I'm a pen to paper person. I did the math on how many patients can I afford to have drop off of this schedule if I'm, have this many appointment spots and we're charging this much. So I literally wrote down what I needed to see to make my bills. And then but what works best for me is word of mouth. And I have a good network. I make it a point to do community networking events. I try to be as present as possible. I answer emails and phones, and honestly, doing it this way, I felt like, this clinic now, my private pay clinic, I've strengthened those relationships even more. I have time to nurture my referral relationships just as much as my patient care relationships. And then, of course, we don't get anybody that doesn't want to be here, that isn't invested. And so our patients are leaving here with better stories, more success. They're giving better word of mouth referrals because they had a better experience, because they were a better candidate on the way in. And so that only helps the word of mouth grow as a quality experience. And it's just grown organically. I honestly, I didn't do anything other than put a letter with a piece of paper with my business cards in it to all my referral sources. That was the only marketing I did for at least 6 months.
Specific physician marketing, you're saying. Yeah. Very good.
Other than that, it was just my friends. I got a Facebook page. I work with a community group of birth workers who are fantastic. You want word of mouth, like your doulas, your midwives, your nurse practitioners, at least in my niche, they have been so supportive, and we get to be a really tight group that really likes who we like.
Yeah. So you mentioned community networking. What kind of events and stuff do you go to pre-COVID?
Yeah, when we were allowed to get
when we used to do that.
Yeah, before it was scary. We would, I did some booths and some workshops, and if you're invited to have a booth at a conference, I would do that. And I just did a couple of those, but of course it was nice to meet the community, but it was really also nice to meet the other booth people and the women who put on the conference. And then it's been awesome because then someone else hears, and, oh, by the way, I have a podcast. And so now I've been on, a couple of podcasts because, my friend saw you at this conference, so will you put on my podcast? So it's just been, we're just such a close community and we really support each other. And of course I refer back to them too. And so it's just been so nice that we just all pass people to each other based on what their needs are.
Okay, perfect. So the networking and just the word of mouth of your own patients, with a little bit of, your direct referral sources from physicians, certain level of that maintained, but not a lot of direct outreach other than just sending them a letter, letting them know. Very good.
A lot of my patients are the providers.
Say again, sorry?
A lot of my patients are providers.
Oh, the providers themselves are coming. Yeah, that does help for sure. When you're treating them, you're probably going to get some patients that come through as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
So one of the things I definitely wanted to chat about, just to help those listening or watching, is about office space. And I know you've had some challenges and some roadblocks and some interesting stories that have occurred with your space, which is beautiful. For those who are watching us on YouTube, we're in one of our treatment rooms here, and it's a really nice space. But tell us a bit about what's happened there, what have been the challenges and things that people can specifically look out for, or, plan ahead in some way to avoid if these things come up, or mitigate the damage.
I wanted to have my own space. So then, of course, with that comes restrictions on what you can rent. And, I intentionally wanted a higher floor so I could have all my windows open and trees. I wanted the space to look and feel like my home. And you'll hear that among the pelvic health therapists, is that don't put anything in your clinic you wouldn't put in your home. And so it was really important to me that it was comfortable. And when you're renting office space, not all of it is nice. It all kind of looks like an office. And I didn't want it to look like an office. I also didn't want it to look like a straight up concrete gym either, which is, it's fine if you're in that niche, but I wanted something comfortable. So I was immediately limited on also where I was going to be. So when I was working at the other clinics, I was at 2 locations and they were basically on different ends of the valley. So I was having to combine 2 different geographic areas. So I had a kind of a limited space on where I could be and still meet both geographic needs. So, and then I was kind of not on a time crunch, but once you get the ball rolling, maybe impatient might be a better word. So I really wanted a space. And then once you rent a space and you have to gut it, your rent's still due even if you don't have floors. So I gutted this space, and it turned out beautifully. But right away, as soon as I rented it, we got a new property management company, and they came in and went, "Wait a minute, what are you doing?" and shut down my construction, even though I had everything approved on a lease. So it cost me a bunch of money to open the lease up again and show the signatures and say, no, I added sinks and a laundry, and they're like, "You can't cut plumbing." I'm like, "Yes, here it is on my lease," but it still cost me a bunch of money. And then I decided.
How did it cost you money? Does it just the delay, or?
Yeah, they showed up and told my construction workers to leave. And so I got charged for that. Like $1,000 a day when your construction workers are planning to work.
I see.
And
okay.
sent home.
Okay. I was wondering, I was like, is this legal fees or what happened? Okay. So how many days did you, before they said, okay, yes, you're right, we're wrong?
Well, it happened 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
I was starting to get a little frustrated. Like, how about next time you have a question, let's read the lease first before you go storming in and kicking my crews out. So we finally agreed that would be reasonable. And so that was great. But then we got robbed a few times.
That's right, robbed. I forgot.
Yeah, so
more than once? Break-ins more than once?
Yeah, there were 3. So one of them was happening while construction was happening. So they just opened the door, they just see I have plywood floors, and they left. The second one, I actually got my door kicked in my first week. So I had to call patients and say, "I'm going to have to reschedule you."
Oh yeah, it was the first week that you opened. I forgot about that. Wow.
That was a rough week.
Yeah.
But it was okay. Everyone's understanding. And then it happened again. And so then I was really concerned if I've chosen the wrong place. And apparently there was another business nearby that has kind of some shady customers. And when that was taken care of, we haven't been robbed in a really long time. So this is really good. But it is also one of the reasons why, a lot of people have like a virtual assistant or something. I really want to have a person at my front desk all the time. So I'm not in a closed room and nobody's out of my front desk and my waiting area. So there's a lot of safety things to think about, even when my suite is inside a larger building. And, and then I probably should have done more due diligence about how much CAM fees can change. And CAM is basically like the HOA for a residential, a commercial business. And so they, if you guys don't know, there's a thing called a CAM reconciliation fee, which is basically like an HOA assessment for businesses. And we got slapped with a big one in February. And and up in the rent. So
Yeah.
for the 3 months I was closed, I had higher rent to cover the
That's
county.
tough. Yeah. So for those listening, what she's talking about, Cam, essentially at the end of the year, the business owner, the building owner is told by the city, okay, these are your taxes. Well, those taxes are estimated in the preceding year and covered by your triple net CAM expenses. Well, if they underestimate, well, it doesn't mean that's their fault. It's just like, hey, we underestimated it. Taxes were higher, or they went up higher than expected. Or it also includes like improvements on the building and things like that. So any of these different things that can happen, that means that, if they underestimated it, they're still going to collect their money and your portion of what they underestimated. And that's where you can get these. And I've had that happen a good number of times. It's like, in a way, I'm almost like, I almost would rather overpay and then you get a check, when they're like, hey, you owe us $5,000. You're like, man, really? It's not like we're running a business that does, 50, 100K in revenue a month. $5,000 is a big chunk and they want it right away. And yeah, like you said, usually it's in concurrence, or concurrently they're raising your rent as well. And so, look out for those things in your lease and be aware of how budgeting can change.
Yeah, and you can negotiate. If you have a really good commercial agent, they can negotiate caps on your CAMs, or low caps on percentage increases of your CAMs. Or if you're in an older building, you might want to plan that they may have more of those assessments, and you can go around it. Maybe I was just a little bit naive. I never rented a commercial space before. But having a nice agent will help you through that.
Absolutely. And it doesn't cost you as the renter any money for an agent. So you should never not have an agent to help you with lease negotiations and finding the right space.
I did. I just probably should have researched a little more on that.
One other thing on that. So were you able to recover any of the expenses that they caused to you by kicking the construction crews out?
No. So
it would have been a legal battle.
It would have been a legal battle, and I didn't want to. So I just, going through this change, it's already so hard. I tried to minimize. I didn't want things to get ugly. I wanted to keep everything positive. I just kind of didn't want it to make kind of a little black rain cloud on my really beautiful space I just worked so hard for. So I just ate it.
Yeah. That sometimes it's like, well, I could spend a year or two fighting this, and at the end of the day and all the time that goes into it and legal fees, probably come out ahead to just say, screw it. I mean, depending on the amounts and kind of case you have, obviously you would have won that most likely. But these, I guess, to make the point with others listening, is that you need to see if you can negotiate in those kinds of things. If there's any chance you're going to be doing any work or having any work done, and she had it in her lease, but not all leases will actually, include that unless you're already planning going into it that you're going to make these changes, and then that's negotiated as part of the lease. So if you think, maybe I'll knock that wall down a couple of years from now when I have the money or whatever, like, you need to talk about that ahead of time and have the allowance in there in the lease. And the other thing to consider is also an insurance policy that, with your general liability insurance policies, and general insurance, business insurance policies, you need to make sure there's a factor of, if something happens to the space, or in this case, like maybe construction is takes 2 months longer than you expect. If you can't make money in that space, that's you need to have an income protection part or coverage in your plan. Because if that's not in there, then you're out that money and you have no way to claim or recover that money. So those are, I'm sorry you had to go through all that, but lessons learned.
I mean, honestly, it was a hassle. I don't think it would make or break me. I just think, I'll probably do something a little bit different last time, but it really wasn't. I mean, it was kind of it was a little sucky at the time.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it's okay, it's just one of those bumps that you have to get a little bit of thickness in your skin as being an entrepreneur and focus on why you're doing this, and it
Yeah.
just works out. It was
Yeah.
okay.
Well done. Good attitude. I love it. So why don't we kind of round it out with if there's anything that you've learned in these 2 years that we haven't talked about that you really wanted to pass on to those who are kind of sitting in the seat you were in years ago listening to this podcast. And it can be more than one thing, but I'd love any parting thoughts that you have for the
Oh,
listeners.
I've just learned so much. I was thinking about this the other day as I knew this was coming up, and there's a place for insurance-based PT clinics. I mean, there really is, and I
Sure.
know you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
insurance, but it if there's something that just doesn't feel right about it to you, it's okay to explore what you feel uncomfortable with in
Mhm.
your current situation. And to me, it was I didn't feel like I was really optimizing like my skills and what I could offer. And that's okay to feel that way. And it's okay that the insurance-based clinics are doing their thing. And it's also totally okay if we want to shift and we want to take care of this niche of our clients and the people that we want to serve. And honestly, it was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. And maybe I'm a catastrophizer, but it was, it was, I honestly thought when I started out, nobody's going to, I'm not going to be able to do this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to, I'm just going to get started. And then wherever my barrier is, that's what I'll work on for a while. So I thought, no one's going to give me a loan. I'm never going to find a space. I'm not going to get insurance. And patients aren't going to come. And so I thought, but let's see where my barriers are. So I just got started, and then pretty soon patients just keep
Yeah.
showing up. So there weren't any, is my point. I was like, wait a minute, we're doing this. And we're
Yeah.
not just doing it, it's going really well. And I'm so happy. And I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, treating people exactly the way I want to be treated. Everyone wants to be here. My staff's happier. I'm happier. My family's happier. Like, if something doesn't sit right with where you're at, it's okay to do something else. It's not going to leave your family in financial ruin. And if it is, then get yourself another couple of safety nets and jump later. But
Mhm.
it has just been the most rewarding thing for me. And it's been really rewarding to now add another therapist into that right away and let her be a part of it right out of the gate. And and you don't have to do it alone.
Mhm.
We've had a really wonderful community here. I mean, your information has been priceless, and the other group members, and it's not, even if you're the only one that's ever done it, because we are. I mean, I'm the only pelvic health physical therapy clinic in the state. Like, I felt that was
Wow.
scary, and and I felt so supported, even though
Mhm.
nobody had ever done it like this before.
Wow.
So that was awesome.
Awesome. Well done. I love that. It's a great sentiment to end on. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling your story. It's been so fun to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cash Based Practice Podcast. If you liked what you heard here today, we have some extremely important things we want to send you. First, a quick start guide to cash-based physical therapy and Medicare. This free ebook will provide the primary rules and regulations surrounding this confusing but important topic. Secondly, we want to share with you the 5 characteristics common to all successful cash-based practices. Find out the vital things Jarod has learned from years of interviewing cash practice owners and running his own successful cash practice. As one of our listeners, we want to give you all this information absolutely free. You can get it right now by going to drjarodcarter.com/success. Again, that's drjarodcarter.com/success. Go there now to get your copies, and we'll see you next time.